Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Today's video has been very kindly sponsored by Squarespace. We're going to discuss more about that later on, but the purpose of the video is to look at Game Week 22 transfer targets. I know there's still a bit of a gap between now and the deadline for Game Week 22, but that doesn't mean we need to stop thinking about FPL and we can still consider our transfer options before we get the updated news around the blanks and doubles. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So two players that are high in demand at the moment, Mitoma and March. I thought we'd start by discussing those two. Both 5.1 million, incredible value. Brighton are performing incredibly well themselves. And the fixtures coming up are really, really solid as well. So when you've got two cheap players with really good underlying data that are actually getting returns too, playing in a pretty good team with good fixtures, it feels like a bit of a no-brainer. So I think normally you could even argue for a double up for these two, and you probably could still argue for that, definitely. The issue that we've got is that Brighton don't have any upcoming doubles yet. They could do in Game Week 29, but for the time being, they don't have any upcoming doubles. And the midfield is absolutely stacked at the moment with options that we want. I could probably name 10 to 15 midfielders that I think are good for the coming weeks, and potentially most of them have doubles as well, the likes of Fernandes and Eriksen that we're going to discuss in the rest of this video. So it's difficult to justify having both at the moment for me, although you could probably make the argument. So the question then comes, if you can only own one, which one is the best to own? And I did discuss this last week, but I'd like to just recap and give my updated opinion on this. The fixtures are great. Bournemouth, Palace and Fulham over the next three. Bournemouth and Fulham both being at home. Really nice. Newcastle away, just to recap, that Game Week 25 fixture against Newcastle. If Newcastle reach the EFL Cup final, so if they beat Southampton in the second leg and they win over the two legs, then that game in Game Week 25 will be postponed. So again, if Newcastle reach the final, that game will not go ahead. That will give Newcastle a blank and it will probably give Brighton a blank. However, Brighton also have two fixtures still to be rescheduled, and they could have a further 3 fixtures to be rescheduled throughout the season. That's going to put Brighton in a position where they need to reschedule these fixtures as soon as possible. So Ben Crellin over on Twitter, the fixture guru, has suggested that if that Newcastle-Brighton game is postponed in Game Week 25, Brighton could still have a single game week because they might reschedule one of the other fixtures to go into that week, and it would give the team that they play against the double, and it would give, obviously, Brighton a single game week. So even if Newcastle do reach the final, it's not definite that Brighton will blank. So that is something to bear in mind. Hopefully by the Game Week 22 deadline, we will have that information. And then West Ham at home in 26 is a decent fixture as well. So fixtures-wise, really strong. Price, really good. Ownership, there's still 2 relative differentials as well. So they're ticking all of the boxes at the moment. Let's take a look at their underlying data. So what I've got here is I've got their statistics per 90 from Game Week 9 to 21. And Game Week 9 was the first game that De Zerbi came in and took charge. So it's basically since De Zerbi's been there. I will also discuss their data since the World Cup, so since the restart, because there is a slight change in their data, but I wanted to try and use the biggest sample size possible. So from Game Week 9 to 21, you can see by the orange boxes, Mitoma is the clear winner in pretty much every category, apart from minutes per game, because he wasn't completely nailed until recently. You could argue he's still not completely nailed, but I think he probably is, especially with Trossard joining Arsenal. But you can see FPL points per 90, expected FPL points per 90, non-penalty expected goal involvement, expected assist, and big chance involvement. Mitoma is coming out on top. His non-penalty expected goals of 0.43, plus his expected assist of 0.28. That puts his expected goal involvement at 0.71. So really, really strong for Mitoma. 5.1 million, that is absolutely ridiculous underlying data. Solly March isn't bad at all at 0.52 for the combined non-penalty expected goal involvement. He's getting 0.72 big chance involvement per 90 as well. So Solly March is absolutely justifying his price tag at 5.1 and then some. I guess my issue is just Mitoma is putting up such incredible data since under De Zerbi from Game Week 9 that it's difficult to justify Solly March ahead of Mitoma if you're looking at this sort of larger sample size for pretty much everything we can see here. The thing that I love about Mitoma as well is 1.17 big chance involvement per 90. He's going to either create a big chance or get a big chance every 90 minutes and then a little bit more as well. So Mitoma looks like the real deal. I don't believe that Solly March is a bad option at all. And like I said, if there was any other situation where we didn't have all these upcoming doubles and blanks, and we didn't potentially have so many other good midfield options, I would be sat here and I'd be saying definitely get both of them in. Because yes, you sometimes don't want to double up on an attack, but I think you need to consider these each in their own right. And they are 2 awesome options at 5.1 million. So I really like them. And I think if you're looking across from Game Week 9 to 21, across that larger sample size, Mitoma is the one to go for. However, I've also brought up their stats since Game Week 17 as well. That's not going to be on the screen because I think I should suggest looking at a larger sample size. But if you're more interested in those recent subtle changes, since Game Week 17, Solly March has a 0.78 non-penalty expected goal involvement. Mitoma has a 0.7. right? So Mitoma is putting up similar data to what he has all season, which is good to see. He's very, very consistent. Solly March has seen a recent increase, and you could say he's been playing a slightly more attacking role as well. However, even though Solly March's data is slightly better, it's a perfectly equal split between expected goals and expected assists. So Solly March is at 0.39 expected goals, 0.39 expected assists, whereas Mitoma is at 0.5 non-penalty expected goal involvement, non-expected goals, and 0.18 expected assists. So I personally prefer, if I'm looking to bring in a midfielder, because they get the extra points and also more bonus points, I prefer my midfielder to be getting more shots and more goal threat as opposed to more creativity and more assists. So for that reason, even though Solly March has shown a recent improvement, I still do prefer Mitoma, even if you look at more recent data. It is just worth noting that it's gone from 0.52 for Solly March to 0.78 if you look at more recent data. So to put all that together, I think both Mitoma and March are absolutely fantastic options. Like I said, in any normal circumstances, I'd be sat here saying doubling up. The issue is because we have so many other good options, the Arsenal midfielders, Manchester United midfielders as well, Andreas at a cheap price, I think it's difficult to justify both. So at the moment, I would lean Mitoma. I really like March. Let me know down below who you prefer. So at the time of me recording this, I don't yet know whether Manchester United and Leeds will definitely double in Game Week 22. So just to recap, as long as neither team draw in the FA Cup fourth round, i.e. as long as neither team get a replay in the FA Cup fourth round, then they will have a double Game Week 22. However, if either Leeds or Manchester United do draw in the FA Cup fourth round in their first fixture, then there will be no double Game Week 22. So we do need to wait to find that out, but I think the bookies odds have placed it at about a 70 to 80% likelihood that neither team will draw. Basically, both Leeds and Manchester United are favourites to progress through to the fifth round. So let's assume for this video that Manchester United and Leeds do have a double Game Week 22, because I don't yet know that. However, even if they don't, I think both Leeds and Manchester United players are worth considering regardless, because the fixtures coming up are pretty good, and Manchester United in particular, I do think are performing very well. Now, of course, the best two Manchester United assets to own are almost undoubtedly Luke Shaw and Marcus Rashford. However, you don't need me to sit here and tell you that two players that pretty much everyone already owns are good assets. So the question then comes, should you go for Manchester United triple up? And if you do, is it a double defence? Is it potentially bringing in De Gea? Or is it bringing in an attacker instead? So I really like the option of De Gea if you're looking for a goalkeeper transfer. I think De Gea and Ramsdale are two players that we didn't really consider, a lot of us anyway, on our Game Week 17 unlimited transfers. But two keepers that are making a lot of saves at a fairly cheap price and are also playing in two good defences as well. So I like both of those options that I'm not really going to discuss today because it's difficult to discuss goalkeepers in detail. However, if you don't go for De Gea, I don't really like any of the other Manchester United options that much because they don't offer much attacking threat and they're not even that great for bonus points. So unless you're going for De Gea, I don't think I would double up on the defence with Luke Shaw. So then you've pretty much got the option of one of Martial and Weghorst, but we don't know if Martial is definitely going to be fit or unavailable. Even if Weghorst is the starting striker, I'm not sure how much I like him at the moment. He's putting in a good effort, he's putting in a good work rate, and his link-up play's been pretty good, but I still don't know if I trust him to get us lots of goals. So the only third option you can go for is Christian Eriksen or Bruno Fernandes. Now, of course, we've got the same issue that if Manchester United reach the EFL Cup final, so if they win across two legs against Nottingham Forest, then they will blank in Game Week 25 along with Brentford. So if you are tripling up on Manchester United, and let's say you already own like a Trippier, maybe a Botman, maybe an Almiron, maybe you're also looking at Brighton assets who again we could be left in a position where you've got 6, 7, 8 blank players. So I would be very careful if you've already got 4, 5 or 6 maybe blank players already to start bringing in even more. But again, we will know before the Game Week 22 deadline whether Manchester United progress through to the final and basically whether they blank in Game Week 25. So wait on those transfers. But again, let's, for the purpose of this video, assume that Manchester United do progress through to the final and they blank in 25 and they also do get a double Game Week 22. Looking at that all together, assuming you can somehow navigate 25 and use your transfers to get those players out, I like the idea of tripling up on Manchester United for this double because it's Palace at home and Leeds at home. They've then got Leeds away, Leicester at home. Let's assume they blank, and then Liverpool away. It's really, really nice set of fixtures. And if they don't blank in 25, the fixtures look even better. So I'm a big fan of the fixtures. The two options that I've got here are Christian Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes because I feel like they're the only two options really that I like, along with De Gea, to finish that Manchester United triple up. Obviously, very different prices, playing very different roles for Manchester United. So I thought I would discuss it. I'm a Manchester United fan myself. Eriksen is essentially playing as part of a pivot, but he doesn't really play that role. He plays a much more attacking role, and he links up the play. So as you can see by his heat map, his touch map, he almost plays more like a number 8. And actually, Bruno can drop into that number 8 role. So we would almost set up in a pivot with Eriksen alongside Casemiro, and then Fernandes more in the hole. But Eriksen also bursts forward, so does Casemiro. You might see Fernandes drop back. So at points, it's a midfield 3. At points, it's sort of a pivot with Fernandes in the number 10 role. But Eriksen's not playing as a defensive midfielder. He's playing a slightly more attacking role than that. But he's most certainly not an attacking midfielder. I wouldn't put him as a number 10 role. He's in that almost number 8 role where he goes between playing a 6 and a 10. So he's basically in a kind of box-to-box midfielder-esque role, which is great. He's on a lot of set pieces as well. But I still do have my reservations about whether he's a proper FPL asset, as someone like Bruno potentially would be. So as you can see by the stats, Bruno comes out on top on pretty much every underlying piece of data, but he is 9.8 million, whereas Eriksen is only 6.3. FPL points and expected FPL points are actually relatively close between the two. So as you can see here, 4.58 versus 4.45, 4.83 versus 4.41. So with respect to how many expected FPL points they're expected to get, and that was a lot of expected, then we're expecting them to get approximately the same, which means they're performing at a relatively similar level. But when we break up their non-penalty expected goal involvement and expected assist. Wow, I'm saying it. Take a shot every time I say expected. No, please don't do that. Looking at non-penalty expected goal involvement and expected assist, 0.62 for Bruno Fernandes versus 0.37 for Eriksen. When you also consider that, as you can see, Eriksen doesn't get 90 minutes in that many games. So his average minutes per game this season is 78. He's probably sitting at about a 0.34, 0.35 expected goal involvement per game for Eriksen. Whereas Bruno, because he plays 90 minutes every game, you're getting about a 0.62. So you're essentially getting double the data with Fernandes in comparison to Eriksen. For big chance involvement, Eriksen is involved in 0.6 big chances per 90. Fernandes is involved in almost 1 big chance per 90. So if you're asking me who's the better option, you didn't need me to tell you this. There's a reason he's like £3 million more, 3.5 million more. Bruno Fernandes is a much better option for me as an FPL option. Not necessarily as a player, but as an FPL option. They both take set pieces, but Fernandes has got ever such a slightly higher expected goals, but much, much higher expected assists. So I like him for that reason. However, at 6.3, Eriksen isn't a bad choice at all. I suppose my major issue with Eriksen isn't necessarily that I really hate his data, isn't that I hate him as an option for the double and for the future fixtures. It's more so that you've got the likes of Rodrigo, as we're going to discuss in a second, Ødegaard, Mitoma, March, Bruno himself. Then you might have one of sort of KDB, Salah. You've got the likes of Andreas for cheap. As I said, the midfield is so stacked at the moment. I'm not sure I can sit here and justify picking a player that doesn't always get 90 and is sitting at 0.37 non-penalty expected goal involvement. However, if you are someone that really likes going in on the doubles, maybe you don't fancy bringing in Leeds players, and maybe you just do really want to own a third United asset but can't stretch to Fernandes, if you tick the boxes all there, I don't mind Eriksen. But for me, I think I would have to say it's probably Fernandes as a third United option, or probably no one, and you just stick with Shaw and Rashford and then focus on building a good team towards blank 25, blank 28 and double game week 29. Let me know what you think of these two Manchester United assets. I'm very, very tempted to bring in Bruno Fernandes myself. So we've already spoken about double game week 22 in reference to Leeds and Manchester United. So if Leeds do get the double game week 22, they play against Nottingham Forest away and Manchester United away. However, I think for Leeds in particular, getting that extra fixture in 22, yes, it's nice, but the fixtures still look pretty good. And it looks like the Southampton versus Leeds game will probably go ahead in 25, unless Southampton do something remarkable in the second leg against Newcastle, which looks unlikely. So they've got really nice fixtures. To have Forest, United at home is not the easiest, but Everton away, Southampton at home, and Chelsea away, a team that aren't performing that well at the moment. I think it's a really nice run for Leeds, and it's actually really nice for their defence as well. They actually have the third best fixtures in the league on the defensive ticker if you look at Fantasy Football Hub, and we're going to discuss one of the Leeds defenders in the next section. So I really do like both the Leeds attackers and the Leeds defenders, but I think the two players that people are considering most is Rodrigo and Gnonto. I'm going to call him Gnonto or Gnonto. Apparently it's like gnocchi, but Gnonto, but let's call him one of those two things. The £5 million forward from Leeds. And then Rodrigo has been really good all season. Now, I actually have a relatively strong opinion on which of these I prefer. But it is worth noting, Bamford's back on the bench. For how long he stays fit, we don't know. But there is a little bit of competition for both of these players here. I think there's direct competition for Rodrigo, there's direct competition for Gnonto, but there's also the issue that if they start rotating around, for example, if Rodrigo is dropped from his position through the middle, he could potentially switch out to the left or out to the right, which could push other players around. So I think there are a few decent options for Leeds, but at the moment, I don't see either of these getting dropped, at least not on a regular basis. We might see a small piece of rotation. However, the underlying data is definitely in favour of Rodrigo, and it's actually really strong for him across the season. So as you can see, 6.34 FPL points per 90 versus Gnonto's 3.52. We've got expected FPL points of 5.98 for Rodrigo versus 4.66 of Gnonto. And then non-penalty expected goal involvement is 0.45 for Rodrigo, which is really, really strong for a £6.4 million asset. 0.22 for Gnonto is not bad, but it probably represents his price tag of 5 million. And then expected assist is very similar for the two. 0.19 for Rodrigo, 0.16 for Gnonto. So I really like Rodrigo's underlying data there. That's a 0.64 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which is super strong. For Gnonto, it's 0.38, which again isn't terrible. It is still probably better than you would expect for a £5 million asset, but I wouldn't say it's like significantly better. I think you are getting a £5 to £6 million asset that could be really good. You could rotate in, but you might not necessarily want to start every week unless we start to see an uptick in his performance, because that data as it isn't mind-blowing, and it would definitely suggest to me that if you're only going to go for one of them and you can get another midfielder, Rodrigo is probably the option to go for. Big chance involvement is 0.83 for Rodrigo versus 0.51 for Gnonto. So if he gets 90 minutes, which he doesn't in every game, for 2 games, you would expect him to get involved in 1 big chance. So again, if you're bringing him in, expecting him to go ballistic, of course he could. Any player could. But the data doesn't necessarily suggest that he's going to be the sort of player that brings in monster hauls. We're going to discuss Nketiah later. Obviously a very different price to Gnonto, but if you're only going to have one striker, that one striking spot that you've got free, I would definitely prefer Nketiah. When you see the data, it's light and day between them. So I don't hate Gnonto as an option. 0.38 is fine. But I think you need to understand that you are bringing in a £5 million asset with okay average-ish data. Rodrigo, I really, really like as an option. The only final thing to note on this, I don't really present eye test stuff to you because I feel like I can't really explain eye test and I can't justify it. However, Wilfried Gnonto is absolutely excellent when you're looking at eye test. He looks absolutely brilliant. Every time he touches the ball, you feel like something could happen. So if we're going by eye test, I like both of them, but Gnonto in particular. If we're going from the data, I have to suggest Rodrigo, unfortunately. You could go for the double up if you want to, but again, free transfers are precious. I'm not sure if you want to double up on the Leeds attack, especially when there are so many other pretty brilliant options coming up, especially the likes of the Brighton and Arsenal assets. So let me know down below if you're looking at any Leeds assets. For me, it's probably going to be Rodrigo coming in if I bring one in. So this section should be a little bit shorter because we've already looked at Leeds and we've already looked at Brighton. But I'd recommend 2 defenders to you, just in case your transfer plans and the players that you're taking out involve looking at some cheap defenders, because I do think that both of these, for different reasons, could be excellent. So just to remind you, wait until right up until the deadline, because we will get news around Game Week 25 and which teams blank. If either Leeds or Brighton blank in Game Week 25, you might not want to bring a defender from that team. They shouldn't both blank, though, depending on which way the fixture goes in the EFL Cup semi-final. And like I said, they both could potentially have fixtures. Both Leeds and Brighton could still play despite the EFL Cup semi-final result. So I like both of these options. They are 2 of the defenders with the best, basically, attacking data, and that's why I like them. So we've got Pascal Struijk of Leeds. I think he's probably the best Leeds defender to own if you do want to attack that double Game Week 22. And then we've got Eriksen Estupinan, the best name in the world. I absolutely love him. I've owned him at points this season, and his expected data is super strong too. So when we look at their data, expected FPL points and FPL points is stronger for Estupinan, but decent for Struijk. He's actually underperformed his expected FPL points, so maybe been a little bit unlucky not to get more. When we look at non-penalty expected goal involvement, Struijk has actually got slightly better at 0.07. The reason for that is, yes, he's been playing left-back under Jesse Marsh, so he's got a very similar-ish sort of touch map to Estupinan, but he's also very, very good from corners as well. So I do think he carries that attacking threat, where as well as getting the assist by going up and down the flank, he can also get you a goal from a corner too. And I do think if Leeds are to score a corner, whenever I watch Leeds, he absolutely launches himself at everything. So I do like him for that reason too. And then you can see expected assists, strong for both, but very strong for Estupinan at 0.13, 0.09 for Pascal Struijk. So both slightly creative, but not off the charts. They're not like the likes of Trent and Trippier. You're not getting crazy returns from these players. But it's 0.16 and 0.16 for both. And it's a slightly different split for each. Obviously, slightly higher expected goals and lower expected assists for Struijk. And then big chance involvement is 0.17 for both. So you're essentially getting virtually identical attacking data from both Estupinan and Struijk. The better defence is definitely the Brighton defence, although in recent weeks, the Leeds defence has seen an increase in their defensive data. So their expected goals conceded per 90 has dropped. They're looking like a slightly stronger defence. If we see that trend continue, and like I said, across the next 6, Leeds actually have the 3rd best fixtures on the defensive fixture ticker, according to Fantasy Football Hub. So I really like the defensive fixtures for Leeds. Their defensive data is improving. And if you do want to attack the double and you're potentially worried if Brighton do, for example, blank in 25 and you want to go somewhere else, I really do like Pascal Struijk as well. But if, let's say, ignore the blank, let's just say, who would I prefer? For me, it is Estupinan. I just feel like expected assists are slightly more regular. and are slightly more predictable for a fullback. Yes, Pascal Struijk could score a header, but I like the fact that, as you can see almost by the touch map, Estupinan's getting in slightly more dangerous positions, and I feel like his returns will be more consistent. Struijk's probably more likely to get you a 15-pointer, but Estupinan's more likely to tick over with the odd assist here and there. So for that reason, and due to Brighton being a slightly stronger defence, I prefer Estupinan. I like both of them. These would probably be two of my top options at 4.5. I, of course, like the likes of Botman as well. I think he's absolutely brilliant, but Newcastle look like they have a very good chance that they'll blank in 25, and potentially you already own a few Newcastle Man United players, and you don't want to keep loading up on those players. So I like Struijk, I like Estupinan. Let me know down below if there are any other defenders you like the look of. So to finish up the video, I thought I would just look at the Arsenal assets available to us and discuss the best 3 to own. I did discuss this last week, but we've got some updated statistics here and obviously some different perspectives as well. I still think it's worth owning 2 attackers and 1 defender because the Arsenal defence are fantastic value. And whilst all of the attackers are probably representing good value as well, and you could definitely argue for an Arsenal triple up, I think there are tons of really good attackers to own in FPL at the moment. We've discussed the likes of the Brighton assets with Mitoma March. We've discussed Rodrigo, Fernandes. That goes without saying, the likes of Haaland, maybe De Bruyne if you still think he's good, Mahrez. There are so many good options to choose from. Whereas the defence, I think in FPL at the moment, is absolutely shocking. And I'm struggling to choose any defenders. So I think it's probably still a good idea to own 1 Arsenal defender. Who you want to own is completely up to you. White has looked a little bit shaky in recent weeks. We've seen Tomiyasu come on at half-time in the Manchester United game. So that's a possibility that there's a bit of rotation there. I actually really still like Zinchenko as an option. Assuming he stays fit, I do think he's fairly nailed. But someone like Gabriel is probably the safest option. Really decent attacking data, always got decent expected goals, and very, very nailed at 5.2. So I still like an Arsenal defender. When we look at the attackers, it's exactly the same as I said last week, but the stats look even better now. Nketiah is putting up ridiculous numbers. And the bigger the sample size is getting, the more insane the numbers are becoming for him. So you can see here, his non-penalty expected goal involvement is 0.94. Hopefully you can remember some of the numbers that we've discussed throughout this video. That is so much better than anyone in and around that price. So at the time of me recording, he's 6.6. Looks like he'll be 6.7 pretty soon. But those are crazy numbers. 1.38 big chance involvement per 90. Whether that be a big chance created or a big chance himself. Projected to get 35.3 points over the next 6 game weeks. So by all accounts, Nketiah for me is the Arsenal asset to own at the moment. Probably along with Ødegaard. Just because Ødegaard is, again, passing the eye test, but also putting up decent numbers as well. He's very, very nailed. You can see really high projected points, and he's also involved in 0.83 big chance involvement per 90. So I think and you don't need me to probably tell you this, the 2 assets to own from Arsenal at the moment are Nketiah and Ødegaard. So if you are to take my advice and go for 1 defender, it would be someone like a Zinchenko / Gabriel. If you've got Ben White, I would keep him, and then probably 2 of Ødegaard and Nketiah. So I think that is the best Arsenal triple up. Martinelli's a tricky one because we do think he's going to get more rotation now with Trossard joining Arsenal and Smith Rowe being available as well. So Smith Rowe and Trossard will take minutes off of Martinelli. I still think he is the starter for almost every game in the Premier League, but we will have to see how that develops. His numbers are slightly better than Ødegaard for non-penalty expected goal involvement, and he's got better expected goals as well. So if Martinelli was nailed, I would have absolutely no intention of selling Martinelli. I wouldn't even touch him. I genuinely think he's a better option than Ødegaard when he's starting and if he played as many minutes as Ødegaard. The issue is we're not expecting him to play as many minutes as Ødegaard now, so potentially the nailedness of Ødegaard makes him an even better option than we potentially considered him already. So Martinelli's a tricky one because I wouldn't advise selling unless you're pretty sure that Trossard and Smith Rowe are going to eat away at his minutes, in which case you could do a switch from Martinelli to Ødegaard. And then Saka, as I've been saying for a while now all season, his numbers just aren't that great, but he seems to be outperforming his numbers at the moment, and he's very, very nailed again. He's still probably on penalties too. So whilst his non-penalty expected goal involvement of 0.44 is genuinely nothing to write home about, it's only slightly better than Gnonto, who I said maybe isn't that much better than being worth 5 million. At 8.2 million, I don't think he justifies his price tag. But he is still getting returns. He is on penalties. He is very nailed. And he's playing in the best attack in the league. So I can still understand the justification for wanting him. But only 1 big chance involvement every 2 games and pretty poor underlying data. I think there are essentially better options. So for me, if they were all to play equal minutes, it would be Nketiah, Martinelli, Ødegaard, Saka. But the fact that Ødegaard and Saka are so much more nailed, I would potentially drop Martinelli to the bottom of that list now because it does worry me slightly. So I think Nketiah is the one to go for. With 1 of Ødegaard, Saka, Martinelli, probably Ødegaard. And then the third player, for me, would still be a defender. If you wanted to go for an Arsenal triple up in the attack, though, with like an Nketiah, Ødegaard, and Saka, that would obviously look fantastic as well. Like I said, though, I just think there are no good defenders at the moment, but there are tons of good attackers and midfielders. And I feel like you could probably just go for 2 Arsenal attackers, get a solid defender in, cover the Arsenal clean sheet, and then maybe take a risk on a slightly more differential with the likes of Mitoma, March, Rodrigo, or Gnonto, or even Fernandes and Eriksen. So hopefully that's all been helpful. Let me know which Arsenal assets you're currently considering. So guys, there you have it. Those are some of the top transfer targets ahead of Game Week 22. Hopefully the video was helpful. But before we wrap up, I do just want to discuss Squarespace, who have kindly sponsored today's video. Squarespace allows you to connect with your audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content. You can manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights all on one easy-to-use platform. When it comes to setting up the site, it genuinely couldn't be easier, and I truly do mean that. There are tons of templates to choose from, as well as videos and support messages to guide you throughout the process. One of the things that I love about Squarespace is the ability to display posts from your social profiles on your website. So you can automatically push website content to your favorite social media channels so that your followers can share it too. If you go to squarespace.com/FPLRaptor or click the link in the description, you can get access to a 14-day free trial and save 10% on your first purchase of a website or a domain. So as I said, massive shout out to Squarespace. Do check them out using the link down below, or go to squarespace.com/FPLRaptor. If you have enjoyed the video today, please do drop a like on it. Let's try and aim for 1,500 likes. Drop some comment down below to feed the algorithm gods. Make sure to subscribe. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.